The snow was falling the way it always did in the high country, slow and merciless, quiet enough to make a man hear his own regrets. He had learned long ago that the mountains did not care about loneliness. They only reflected it. That morning, the wind cut through his coat like a blade, but he did not notice. His eyes were fixed on the narrow path ahead, where a single figure struggled forward through the white. She was smaller than he remembered, thinner somehow, wrapped in a worn shawl that did little against the cold. The village had whispered her name for months, always followed by the same word. Widow. As if that one word explained everything she was and everything she had lost. He had never believed that. People were never just one word. When he reached her, she startled, stepping back as if he were a shadow come alive. He raised his hands slowly, careful not to frighten her, and offered a small nod of greeting. Her eyes met his for a moment. They were tired eyes, but steady. Eyes that had cried all their tears and learned to endure what remained. You'll freeze out here, he said, his voice rough from the cold and from years of speaking more to mountains than to people. Without thinking, he shrugged off his coat and held it out to her. It was thick, heavy, the kind of coat that carried warmth like a promise. She looked at it, then at him. For a second, he thought she might take it. The wind howled, lifting the edges of her shawl, and he stepped closer, insisting without words. That was when she shook her head. No, it was a quiet refusal. No anger, no pride, just a simple, final word. I'm fine, she added, though her lips were pale and her hands trembled. You'll need it more than I will. He wanted to argue. He wanted to tell her that he was stronger, that cold had been his companion for years, that he could walk back without it. But something in her expression stopped him. It wasn't stubbornness. It was resignation. As if accepting help felt heavier than the cold itself. So he stood there, coat hanging uselessly between them, and nodded. She walked past him, her footsteps fading into the snow, leaving behind a silence that felt louder than any storm. That should have been the end of it. But it wasn't. From that day on, her refusal followed him everywhere. In the crackle of his fire at night. In the empty space beside him as he ate. In the way the mountains seemed less vast, as if they were watching him too. He told himself it was foolish to think of her. He barely knew her, but his heart did not listen to reason. It listened to memory, to the way her voice sounded when she said no, to the strength it must have taken to refuse warmth when you had already lost everything else. He began to see her often after that. At the market, at the edge of the village, sometimes on the same narrow paths where snow and solitude ruled. They exchanged small words, polite nods. Nothing more. He never offered the coat again. Some lessons came only once. Yet something grew between them, unspoken and heavy. He brought firewood to her door without knocking. She left bread on his windowsill without explanation. Their kindness passed like secrets in the night, careful not to wake the past. He thought, slowly, that this was enough. That love did not always need a name. That maybe this quiet understanding was safer than hope. Then one evening, as winter deepened its grip, he found her standing outside his cabin. Snow clung to her hair. Her face was pale, but her eyes were burning with something he had never seen before. Fear. They're asking me to leave, she said, her voice breaking despite her effort to keep it steady. My husband's family. They say I don't belong here anymore. The words hit him harder than the cold ever had. He felt something rise in his chest, fierce and sudden. He wanted to tell her to stay. To tell her she belonged anywhere she chose. To tell her she belonged with him. The words crowded his mouth, desperate and clumsy. This time, he did not hesitate. This time, he spoke. Stay, he said, with me. She stared at him, and for a moment, hope dared to breathe between them. He saw it in her eyes. He felt it in his own chest, fragile and bright. Then she shook her head again. No, this no was different. It hurt differently. It cut deeper. I can't, she whispered. I won't survive another loss. And loving you would be the greatest one of all. He tried to protest, but she stepped back, already retreating into the night. Her figure blurred by falling snow, by tears he refused to let fall. The door closed behind her words, and something inside him closed with it. She left the village before spring. Years passed. The mountains remained. He grew older, quieter. People said he was hard, unfeeling. They were wrong. He felt everything. He felt it every time winter came and he remembered a coat held out in the snow. Every time he heard the word no echo in his mind, not as rejection, but as fear disguised as strength. He never married, never left the mountains. Some wounds did not bleed. They simply stayed open, teaching you how to live around them. On the coldest nights, when the wind howled like a grieving thing, he would sit by the fire and imagine a different ending. One where she had taken the coat. One where she had said yes. Not because she needed him, but because she trusted happiness enough to risk it. But life does not ask what we imagine. It only gives us what we choose. And her no, spoken softly in the snow, became his greatest wound. Not because it rejected him, but because it showed him how close love had come, and how easily it had slipped away, leaving behind a silence colder than winter and deeper than the mountains themselves.